When I was little, I used to hear, "A penny saved is a penny earned." But does this strategy still work today?
Saving money doesn't really work.
Saving money is costing you a fortune.
Savers are losers.
And here's more to that. The money in a savings account, it's a guaranteed loss. After watching this video, you know why it happens and what are the best ways to multiply your money without a savings account. Saving up money in your bank account seems like a good idea, right? It is certainly better than spending everything you earned, but if you really look into the interest rates, they are very low. In fact, they're so low that once you put your money into a savings account, you start losing your money instead of multiplying it. How's that possible? Well, money simply gets cheaper over time. You might have heard of this phrase, but what does that really mean? We all know the term inflation, but what many people associate it with is higher prices. Yet higher prices are only the result of something bigger. Let's say that a year ago, you could buy 3 oranges for $1, and today you can only get 2 oranges. Yes, of course, it is a sign that the prices increase, but it also means that your money can buy you fewer things, which indicates that your money decrease in value. So basically, inflation isn't only about raising prices. Inflation is like a Pac-Man that eats up your money day after day. How does it work? To answer this question, let's go deeper into the concept of purchasing power. It refers to how much you can buy for a certain amount of money. For example, in 1944, you could get 20 Coca-Cola glass bottles for $1. Now, you will need to pay around $60 for the same 20 bottles. While $1 today will buy you this Walmart 4-star rated chocolate at most. All this is the result of the dollar's lower purchasing power. Here is how it has changed over the years. The data starts back from 1913 when the Federal Reserve began managing the money supply to ensure economic stability. And here we are, over 100 years later, when the dollar is worth 30 times less. What this graph really means is that the products and services you could buy for $1 back in 1913 would, on average, cost $26.14 in 2020. And if we fast forward to 2023, this number increased to $31.03. Of course, it doesn't work like that for everything, because many products and services became much more affordable compared to the beginning of the 20th century. But still, the overall worth of the US dollar decreased, and it continues to do so. The process of a currency losing its value is also called devaluation. But the most important question is, why does this happen? There were many events that led to dollar devaluation. Let's check the major ones, and you'll see that all of them have something in common. In 1913, the Fed started to manage the US monetary system. Basically, it became an institution that will determine how much money was floating in the American economy. In the year 1933, President Roosevelt signed an executive order 6102, which basically made gold possession illegal. Why? You see, back then, the US dollar was backed by gold, and even on the old banknotes, you could read that that piece of paper basically certifies that there has been a corresponding amount of gold deposited in the treasury to back up that money. Yet, having money backed by gold was very limiting because you couldn't print money freely to respond to economic challenges. So in 1913, the US decided to back only 40% of the value of the US dollar. It worked for 20 years. But the gold reserves were always decreasing, and the debt limit the US could take on was approaching. That's exactly why in 1933, the government realized that to print money, they needed more gold. And one of the easiest ways to get it was to collect it from the citizens. So according to the order President Roosevelt signed, Americans could own no more than $100 equivalent of gold. That was about 5 troy ounces or around 150 grams back in the days. More than that was seen as an excess, and people were required to exchange that excess gold. The government was paying $20.67 per troy ounce of gold. If Americans refused to do so, they could face a fine of $10,000 or 10 years imprisoned.
It was against the law to own this. You weren't allowed to have more than, I think, 5 ounces of gold in your house, period.
In 1944, the US dollar officially became the world's reserve currency, according to the Bretton Woods Agreement. Back then, the demand for the US dollar got higher, and the government had to satisfy it by increasing the supply of the currency. And on top of that, financing the Vietnam War and social programs also require some extra cash. That's why more dollars appear in the economy. Here, you can see how the US dollar value decreased during those decades. This led to President Nixon announcing the end of the gold standard in the US in 1971. That was a significant shift that gave the Fed even more power. They successfully leveraged that power during the 2008 crisis with quantitative easing, or QE, and during COVID times. All those events led to a higher dollar supply, making the American currency less valuable over the years. So when you hear about an increased money supply, it just basically means that there's more money floating in the economy. But where do governments take all this money from? There are two main options: print more banknotes or create more money electronically. The last one, it's basically adding extra zeros to bank accounts. It sounds like a scam, but that's exactly what happens when you get a mortgage. For example, you go to the bank or other financial institution, you bring your down payment, and you receive your loan. What a bank does from its end, it's basically type in the numbers into a computer and credit their account with a deposit of the size of the mortgage. And just like that, new money is created. When we look at money from this perspective, many of us wonder, why would something like this have any value at all? And the eye-opening truth is that what we call money has no tangible value. It is hard to process this information, but the truth is that dollars, euros, and pounds are currencies, not money. Even though we often use these two words interchangeably, they don't mean the same. Money and currency share many common qualities, such as portability, durability, being a medium of exchange, and a unit of account, etc. But there's one major difference. Money is a store of value over long periods of time, whereas a currency is not. For example, gold has held its value for thousands of years, while no currency has survived this long. So if I will now print something that looked like a paper currency and say that it is NOVARISE dollars, obviously no one will treat it as a real thing, even if it's backed up by gold. So why do we believe in the value of the US dollar then, if it's also just a piece of paper? There are several reasons for that, but mainly they come down to three main aspects. Historical factor, which means that the US dollar has a long history and it survived several previous crises. So people used it throughout the years and it worked. Of course, if the US dollar wasn't backed by gold initially, it would have probably never become the world's currency. But now, with all of its hundreds of years of history, people believe in its reliability, even without the gold standard. The second aspect is experience-based. Let's say yesterday you went to a store and got groceries for a week with your dollars, and you did this many times before. That's why we all believe that we will be able to do the same thing tomorrow, in a week, and years from now. And the last important reason why we trust in the US dollar value is the US government and its economy. It is generally believed that American democracy, free markets, and a fair judicial system and a relatively stable economy are trustworthy. So people around the world believe in the dollar's value. But of course, in reality, the US dollar and any other currency are just a piece of paper backed by our trust at most.
Money itself doesn't have value. Money is a vector for transmitting value.
That's why it is crucial to understand that the currencies we have now might not exist in the future. 75% of fiat currencies, meaning the ones that aren't backed by anything, simply vanish over the years. Of course, it won't happen in a day, especially with the US dollar. But we have to know the truth about our money and its real value, because this isn't something you or your kids will learn in school or college, even though this information is essential to make smart financial decisions and multiply your money as a result. So again, if you put your money into a savings account, you will be simply waiting for the currency to lose its purchasing power. There is a simple rule. If the interest rates are lower than the inflation rate, then you don't earn anything on your investment, no matter how high or low the interest rates are. Of course, not all savings accounts are made equal. The most widespread option is the traditional savings account. As of today, traditional savings accounts offer an annual percentage yield, or APY, of 0.20% to 0.49%. This means that your highest earnings could only be less than 0.5% yearly. This really doesn't seem like the best option if you want to multiply your money. Yet, there are other types of saving accounts, such as high-yield savings accounts and CDs. A CD is a certificate of deposit that can pay a higher interest rate than a traditional savings account in exchange for restricted access to your funds during the CD term, which it often varies between 3 months and 5 years. If you take your money out before maturity, you will often pay a penalty. At the same time, a high-yield saving account also offers higher interest rates, but it's more similar to a traditional savings account. High-yield savings account allow you to make regular deposits and withdrawals, though the number of withdrawals might be limited. Besides, high-yield savings accounts are typically offered by online-only banks or credit unions, which have lower operating costs and can use their savings to offer higher rates. Here, you can see the difference between the traditional savings account rates and the high-yield ones. And of course, these numbers look much better. And if, let's say, you put $10,000 into a high-yield account, you will earn more compared to a traditional savings account. But it is still not the best option, because when we look at this year's inflation rate, all your earnings will almost be pointless. When the inflation is 5%, for example, it means that the dollar's worth decreases by 5%, roughly speaking. So when you get an interest rate of 0.3%, you lose your money. And when it is the same 5%, you're just left with the same purchasing power. And even if your interest rates on a savings account is slightly higher, your main asset, meaning deposited money, in this case, doesn't appreciate in value over time. Okay, so if the savings accounts aren't the best for multiplying your money, then what should you choose, right? There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution. Remember that each situation is different, but there are some things you have to understand to be able to multiply your money as effectively as possible. Any investment has 3 key aspects to consider: opportunity cost, time value of money, and compound interest. Let's imagine that you decide to get into investing to multiply your money and get some passive income. So you start reading different articles and listening to the experts to find the best investment option for your situation and goals. In the end, you choose to invest in real estate. So it means that you will say no to other potential investment opportunities. And it doesn't really depend on your budget. No matter how much money you have to invest, you will still have to choose some options over others. So how do you make the best choice? There is something called opportunity cost. Basically, it means the earnings potential the investor missed out on when they choose another investment opportunity. To calculate it, you will have to take the return on the best missed option and subtract the return on the chosen investment. But it isn't only about the investment choices. You can measure anything in your life this way. For example, Let's say a person pays $4 for a coffee every day. Then yearly, this person ends up spending $1,460 on this habit. But if this person invested this money into the S&P 500, for instance, which on average gives a 11.8% of return, he or she will get over $1,630. But instead, this person got $1,460 less by spending that money on coffee. Often, people think that they will start investing later on. Yet, in terms of returns, later on isn't the most viable strategy, because the money you have now, it's worth more than it will be in a year, 2, or 5 years from now. This is the rule of the time value of money. Why? Your money can't bring you returns unless you choose to invest it. So imagine, for example, that you have your money saved, but you decided to wait until the perfect moment to invest it. First, inflation will decrease the purchasing power of the currency. And second, you will miss your opportunity cost because this same money could be working for you if you invest it. And in many cases, you can multiply your money exponentially if you know how to leverage the compound interest. What is compound interest? You can think of it this way. Your simple interest is the earnings on your initial investment, and the compound interest is the earning on your initial investment plus your interest. Let's say you get a $10,000 high yield deposit at 5% annually with a simple rate for 2 years. In this scenario, you will earn $500 yearly and get a total of $1,000 of interest. In contrast, if you have a compound interest rate, you will earn $500 for the first year, and the next year, your interest will be calculated based on $10,500. That is $10,000 plus $500. That's why you will end up earning $525. So you receive $25 more compared to the simple rate for 2 years. This might not seem like such a big difference, but the beauty of compound interest is that it grows exponentially, meaning it will get more noticeable over time. If we go back to our example with $10,000 deposited at 5%, but we'll get $500 of interest the first year, $1,025 of accumulated interest the second year, $10,789 in 10 years, and $33,219 in 30 years. And if you had a simple rate during these 30 years, you will earn $500 annually. And as a result, your overall return will equal $15,000 instead of $33,219, which is over 2 times lower. Compound interest is one of the greatest ways to multiply your money significantly. But what investments can offer compound interest? The most basic options are savings accounts. But again, it can only work if you invest in CDs and high-yield savings accounts. Otherwise, the returns are so small that they almost make no sense. Yet, if you choose a compound interest rate for your CDs or high-yield savings account, you can get decent earnings over time, but it won't be the most profitable option. Another option is a retirement account, such as a 401k or an IRA, for example. Besides the compound interest earnings, these accounts often offer tax advantages and are usually tax-free until withdrawal. Savings accounts offer you the advantage of compound interest from the start, but you shouldn't just settle with that. The truth is that you can use compound interest to your advantage with pretty much any type of investment. Take real estate, for example. Real estate is known as one of the best investments for decades. It can bring you great returns, especially if you leverage the compound interest. How does it work? Let's say you invested in a rental property. Then from one side, you will get monthly payments from your tenants. And from the other side, your property will appreciate in value over time. Apart from that, everything you earn, either from renting your property out, flipping it, or selling it in 20 to 30 years, can also be reinvested. This is what compound interest is about. And the concept of reinvesting isn't only valid for real estate. You can also apply it to bonds and bond funds, real estate investment trusts, aka REITs, stocks, mortgage-backed securities, etc. But Compound interest can also play against you, and you must be clear about it before thinking about any investment opportunities. Because if you're making minimum payments on high interest loans or credit card debt, your balance can also grow exponentially as a result of compounding interest. This is how people get trapped in a debt cycle. When a person gets into this debt cycle, it's hard to get out of it. And obviously, they can't invest because all the money goes towards paying the debt off. So if now you're wondering whether to invest or not, the best thing you can do is to take a look at your current finances and answer these questions. How big is your debt and can you afford it? Do you have an emergency fund? What is your investment budget when you subtract the emergency fund amount? These simple questions are great for understanding where you are financially and your starting point. And from there, you can define what investments are more appropriate for you, your goals, and your lifestyle. But no matter what you do, remember the real time value of money and the investment opportunity cost. Because as we've seen today, waiting is sometimes the biggest enemy of multiplying your money. If you found this video useful, share it with your friends and family. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.